everybody. On today's episode, we're going to be doing something called a poutine rôti, or a baked dumpling. Now, traditionally, this recipe comes from southern New Brunswick, and most of my family are from the north. Either way, I've had it before. It's very tasty. However, down there, they usually either add a syrup made of brown sugar or molasses, which was a more common ingredient down there, given it was a maritime port. I live in Quebec, and I'm going to use maple syrup. Now, between mid-March all the way through the end of April is cabane à sucre time, or the cabin you go in the woods when the producers show you how they make maple syrup. It's a really good product. Lots of antioxidants, lots of minerals, but it's still a sugar. However, it's Easter. It's a festive little dish. And also, if you have problems with eggs or with yeast, this pastry will be really good for you. It was developed for a man's wife, a chemist. His name was Alfred Bird. And basically, he's the guy that invented baking powder. So, let's try it out. Bit of baking powder, bit of maple syrup. Let's go. For poutine rôti, we're going to need some apples. So here I have a mix of 4 apples, some Cortlands and Spartans, about half a cup's worth of dried cranberries, and half a cup's worth of dried raisins. That's our filling. For the pastry, we're going to need about 320 grams of flour, 17 grams of baking powder, 30 grams of sugar, a little bit of salt, 2.5 grams. So we're going to need 60 grams of butter. We're going to mix this in with the flour and all the other ingredients which have been sifted. And we mix it until we get a nice little bit of crumb. And then we're going to add our liquid component, which is going to be 175 mils of milk. Now this will activate the baking powder because of the pH. So you want it to look like this, starting to come together. And once that's done, we wrap it up and let it rest. So after that, we roll it out into a log and we divide it into even pieces. Anywhere between 9 and 12 is fine. So I'm just using a nice pastry cutter, cutting them into even little pieces. Then eventually we're going to flatten them out. But first, you let it rest. Put a piece of plastic over it, cover it, give the dough a chance to relax. If you don't, the pastry dough becomes a little bit tough. Now the filling for this dessert is super easy. You core out the apples after you've peeled them. And then what we do is we chop them up to fairly large pieces, but not too large. On average, I'd say maybe about 24 pieces per apple, but you get the gist of it here. Then put all the chopped up apples into a bowl with the dried fruit. We add just a touch of salt and some sugar. Now the salt draws out some of the moisture and the sugar just balances out the sweetness. And we just mix it all together. And that's pretty much it. The dough is rested, so now we're going to flatten it out. Now here I'm using a tortilla press, but you can equally use a couple of frying pans. Just squish it until it's flat and you get it round. And then from that point, we're going to roll it out until it gets to a diameter of about 5 or 6 inches. So you flour a surface, and you roll it out a little bit more, just so it's big enough to accommodate all that filling. Now, what we do is we make a hole in the center. Now I'm using a little nozzle from a piping bag, but anything that's round will do. So put it in the center, make the indentation, and then we're going to get ready to fill. So we take that filling that we made earlier. I'm just going to add a small amount in the middle. Don't worry if it gets a little, lopsided in some areas. Just put enough in the middle so it works. And we grab the bottom, we wet the edges, and we're going to form it into a ball. And after that, we're going to flip it over and just remove that little circle that we made earlier. Now here we have our little vent. Now this is important because all the liquid and steam will escape, and it's a place where we can put in our syrup. So we get it ready for the oven, 375 for about half an hour, and you just pour that golden syrup right down the center. Share, like, and subscribe. Have a happy Easter, everybody. Take care.